Hey everyone, welcome to Logically Speaking Sports, brought to you by the Daily Beacon. This is our second installment. I'm Adam.
This is Jared.
And this is Miller.
And today we're going to be doing our predictions for NFL matchups for Week 7. Going to start it off here on Thursday Night Football, Broncos and Cardinals. So in this one, I'm going to take the Cardinals, actually. I think Josh Rosen comes out, has an okay game. I think they're going to try to feed David Johnson a little bit more in this one. I think Wilkes might start realizing that he's the best piece in that offense, and it's not really all that close. He's going to have to feed him the ball at some point. I think it comes against this Broncos defense that in the past 2 weeks has given up at least 200 rushing yards. So I'm going to take the Cardinals in this one 20-14 over the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I do think the Cardinals' offense is going to experience a little bit of a wake-up call. I think over the last couple of weeks since Rosen took over the starting job, he's definitely been the clear starter. Sam Bradford wasn't having a terrible time, mainly because there's really no weapons there in Arizona. But Josh Rosen's clearly is the future, and might as well play him now. I'm still picking the Broncos win 24-17. I'm impressed by the Broncos' defense overall, and Case Keenum has been a pretty solid game manager so far this year.
Yeah, I have the Broncos too. I actually have the same score as Miller, 21-17. Last week was good for the Cardinals. I think they finally started to realize that David Johnson, as Adam said, is a big piece of their offense. He had at least 18 carries last week. While the yards per carry wasn't very high, I think it's just good to see that they're finally getting in the ball. Broncos had a tough week. I just think that with their offense with Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman and Case Keenum, I think it's going to be one of those games. It's going to be close, and I just think that they're going to pull it out even though they're on the road.
Yeah, I just think with Johnson, it's going to have to be quality over quantity in that offense because the offensive line isn't great. But if you give him carries, at some point he's going to break those long runs. And I think Wilkes is going to learn that more and more. I think it's the same thing with Christian Kirk. They've been working him in the offense a lot more. Him and Rosen seem to be pretty tight. And I think Kirk has probably his best game so far just because they'll probably lock up Fitz just because a lot of teams have been focusing him. So, yeah, next up, we're going to go Chargers and Titans. This is the early game in London, right? On Sunday, 9:30 Eastern time. This one, I'm going to take the Chargers. So in this game, the Titans really confused me. Last week had a tough outing against Baltimore.
And it wasn't just tough; it was pretty terrible.
Yeah, it was brutal. But I think the Chargers are on the right track. Although I think it might be closer than people were expecting with Bosa out. Again, that Chargers defense has been a little up and down, a little bit inconsistent. This seems like one of those trap games for them where they might go down or just squeak out a tough one. But I am going to take the Chargers 28-14. Rivers goes out, has a pretty good game. Melvin Gordon continues the underrated work he's been doing all season. I personally think he's a top 5 back right now. He's been outperforming David Johnson. Of course, Le'Veon hasn't played yet. Freeman's been out, so he's moved up probably into my top 5. Tyrell Williams had a really good game last week. I expect him to do pretty well in this one. Expect Keenan Allen to step up a little bit. I know Adoree Jackson will probably be on him somewhat, but I think they're going to make plays to try to get him open and in space.
Yeah, it's not going to be close. The Chargers overall as a whole unit they did start out pretty mediocre. I think everyone can attest to that. They have woken up these last couple weeks, and I'd say they're one of the hottest teams in the NFL right now.
Easily.
Titans, I mean, like you said, they're confusing. You don't know as of right now, you don't know what you're going to get week by week. I mean, they go some games where they only kick field goals, and then they beat the Eagles by a touchdown where they actually put a good amount of points on the board. And then they have a week like last week where they, completely shut down by the Ravens defense, who they are a good defense, but still you never want to see a professional football team score 0 points in an entire game. I'm picking the Chargers 24-7. I think this is the worst kind of time for the Titans to go overseas to play a football game, and the schedule isn't getting much friendly to them, but I don't think it's going to be close.
Yeah, I have the Chargers in this one. Titans, tough week last week against the Ravens at home, got shut out. Just looked like they got overmatched in every single phase of the game. Chargers played the Browns last week. They absolutely manhandled Cleveland. They definitely showed why Mayfield's a rookie. I think they confused him with a lot of packages on defense, and I think the 2 interceptions by Baker Mayfield showed that. Like you said, the Chargers are the hottest team right now in the NFL. Melvin Gordon had 132 rushing yards last week and 3 touchdowns. I think they're finally starting to find a good balance with him and Rivers. Rivers only had to throw the ball 20 times last week, which is good to see.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot different from what that team is known to be.
It's kind of like what the Saints used to do. They had to have Breeze throw the ball at least 50 times a game. And I think they finally kind of figured it out. Defense is starting to show up even without Bosa. I had this game going 31-13 Chargers.
Jumping ahead to a noon game, a 1 o'clock Eastern game, a game probably people will actually be up for. Because I won't blame them for not wanting to get up at 9:30 to watch a Titans and Chargers game, unless you're fans of the respective team. But let's jump ahead to the Texans at the Jags. Jags coming off a really tough, just getting decimated by the Cowboys last week. I think that's the last thing anyone expected the Cowboys to drop 40 points on the top of defense in the NFL.
Yeah, that daunted defense. Jalen Ramsey talking a lot.
Jalen Ramsey not having much to say after the game either.
No, he's pretty silent.
He did not know what happened during that game. I think overall the Texans have become. I think they finally realized the team they are and the talent they have around them. Running game still hasn't impressed me through these couple weeks, mainly because I think they have a lack of his top running back. But Deshaun Watson, even with shaky play, has delivered drives when he needs to. I know it came down last week against the Bills, but I do think people underrate the Bills a little bit. And I mean, whenever you put Nathan Peterman at quarterback, you're not going to win a game. I'm picking the Texans to squeak out with a 17-14 road win. I think it's going to be close, but I just don't see the Jags rebounding from last week just yet.
Yeah, I had the Texans in this one. Jaguars coming off a absolutely horrendous loss to the Cowboys. That's what everybody talks about is their defense, and they got shredded. I mean, plain and simple. Dak ran for at least 100 yards rushing and had almost 200 yards passing. I mean, that just goes to people who have been talking trash about Dak. I think that was kind of his breakout game to show, hey, I can play against a real defense.
Yeah.
The Jacksonville doesn't really look like a real defense right now.
Yeah, even with the lack of receivers, he went out there and had himself a really, really nice game. Best one he's had so far, and it's not really all that close. In this one, I'm going to take the Texans. I think it'll be a close one. I think Deshaun Watson plays pretty well. I think he's going to have to move around the pocket a lot, which he struggled with somewhat this year. He seems to be dropping his eyes a little quick because of the injury last year. He wants to get away from the defenders that could cause another injury, which is understandable, but he's going to have to learn that against tough defenses, especially like the Jaguars that have a good pass rush, he's going to have to keep the eyes up, look downfield, because Hopkins is going to get open a lot. So I'm going to take the Texans 24-17. Bortles probably doesn't have his best game. I think Watt and Clowney are going to be in the backfield a ton. Fournette and Yeldon are both questionable as of right now. Yeldon battling a couple injuries, I think an ankle and a knee.
I think Fournette's not even practicing this week, so
Fournette doesn't look good to play either. So it might be Jamal Charles getting a lot of carries next week, which will be interesting. I kind of want to see it, but that should be an interesting one. The next 1 o'clock Eastern game, Eagles and Panthers. Jared, you can start this one off.
Yeah, I had the Eagles in this one. Had a good Panthers had a tough loss last week against Washington. Almost came out with a win, drove down, and then Cam, like he normally does, chokes in clutch time.
Wow. No barrier.
Ruthless. Okay.
The Eagles look kind of like they're finally finding their offense, I think, with Alshon Jeffrey and Wentz. I think finally getting off their injuries, it looks like they're finally finding that connection, especially after beating the Giants, which, I mean, really isn't much of an accomplishment at this point.
They just look looser out there.
I think their defense looks good, too. I think the corners kind of is still suspect for me. I think that's going to be kind of their big issue this year. I think it's going to be the only thing that holds them back from being a serious contender, which I think they are, but I think that's what's going to be the biggest thing for me. I think they're both really good teams. I had this one 24-21 Eagles.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think overall, Eagles are looking like a team that's also waking up, had a lot of early season pressure. Even I think Wentz is finally readjusting from the ACL injury he suffered last year. Like I said, Panthers. Overall, I know they have a good record and they are winning games. But I'm overall just still not impressed with them yet. I do think the offense is a strong suit for them. I've been really unimpressed by the defense going into this year. And Eagles coming off a pretty solid win last week against the Giants, who give credit to the Giants defense. While their offense is pretty horrendous and terrible, their defense actually hasn't been all that awful this year. Not the best, but also not the worst. I'm going to pick the Eagles to win 21-17. I think it's going to come down to another late minute drive, and I think Carson Wentz will beat the victory this week.
Yeah, in this one, I'm going to take the Eagles as well. I think Wentz and Jeffrey look a lot better. I think Aguilar has kind of stepped back a little bit, kind of like what he has been the past couple of years, but I think his hands are a lot better. He's making a lot of the easier catches. I think Corey Clement and Smallwood looked pretty good last week in their win against the Giants. Yeah, I don't love their secondary. Malcolm Jenkins, though, seems to never age, makes big plays all the time. But with the Panthers, I think a lot of their offense revolves around McCaffrey catching passes out of the backfield. And I think the Eagles' defense, and especially their defensive line, is pretty good at shutting that down fairly quickly. Their outside rushers are pretty quick. Barnett out there can really make some plays. Fletcher Cox in the middle, one of the best run stoppers in the league. So I think Cam may struggle in this game because he's going to be forced to pass the ball. Funchess has had some pretty good weeks these past few. And Greg Olsen is on track to be back once again this week. I expect him to step up a little bit more. I think Cam is going to use him as like a safety blanket in this game a lot when he's getting pressured. But I'm going to take the Eagles in this one 27-17. Next up, we got the Vikings and Jets. I'll start this one off. Don't think it's going to be all that close. I think the Vikings wake up a little bit more. Last week, I wasn't really impressed with them, even though they did pull out a 10-point win. The Cardinals looked pretty good against them. One of the reasons I'm picking the Cardinals this week. But their defense just isn't all there right now, both physically and mentally to me. They have a lot of injuries on both sides of the ball. I know Sendejo didn't practice today. Griffin isn't there. So it's just kind of injury-riddled, kind of in shambles as of right now. Trey Waynes has not looked great so far this year, and Xavier Rhodes has been called for a lot more penalties than he has been the past couple of years. He's a very physical corner, but sometimes takes it a little far. But overall, I think the offense kind of pulls it out against the Jets. The Jets' defense is super inconsistent. One week, they're looking like a top 5 defense. One week, it's a bottom 5 defense. Probably to do with the fact that they are younger. But I think the Vikings in this one kind of use Dalvin Cook, pound the ball, get Thielen and Diggs open in space. I expect Kyle Rudolph to actually do pretty good in this one against those Jets linebackers. Maybe grab a couple touchdowns. I wouldn't be surprised. So in this one, I'm going to take the Vikings 31-14 over the New York Jets.
Yeah, I don't have this one being all that close either. I think as of right now, the Vikings just don't have an identity on either side of the ball.
Yeah.
You see weapons like Stephon Diggs, who had a huge year last year to earn an extension. This year, who's had a pretty quiet season so far. He has a couple of touchdowns, but overall hasn't been what I think anyone really thought he would.
Yeah.
Adam Thielen definitely looks like the number 1 there right now.
Top 5 receiver right now, in my opinion.
I would agree, especially in fantasy. I mean, we want to talk about Jets' inconsistency. I think it's more so the offense and the defense.
Yeah.
I mean, you see him put up like over 30 points last week against the Colts, who I know have a subpar defense, but even still. And then another weeks they scored like less than 21. They're a really confusing unit. I do think Darnold could lead their offense to more consistency and a better offense as a whole in the future. But I mean, I like the Vikings way too much in this game. I have them winning 20-14.
Yeah, I have the Vikings in this one too. The Vikings last week against the Cardinals, just like Adam said, didn't really impress me all that much. Cousins looked like he struggled against their defense, which hasn't been a theme for the Cardinals defense much this season. They did look like they tried to get the running game going, which they did. And Davis Murray had 155 yards rushing on 24 carries, which is big for them. But a lot of that game was one possession for the most entirety of that game. And I think just the overall talent of the Vikings won that for them. Like I said, it's just they don't have an identity. It just seems like to me that some days will throw the ball a whole lot, and then they try to run the ball like they did last week. The Jets, on the other hand, they pulled out a good win against Indianapolis. I think they're finally starting to let Darnold open the offense up for him and just kind of let him just almost get in that gunslinger mentality. Because you can tell by some of the turnovers he has, but which is going to be just something that you get with a rookie for sure. But, I mean, 24 for 30 last week, that's pretty good. Jermaine Kearse finally looked like the guy after Quincy Enunwa got hurt. I think this game is going to be kind of close. I think it's going to be close until the end. I think the Vikings, like I said last week, they kind of have the overall talent's going to win this game for them, 34-24.
Yeah, with the Vikings, I just think it has to be a run-first offense. You can't expect Kirk Cousins to do a whole lot. especially throwing the ball downfield. You have to get some of those swing routes with the running backs, get them in space, make him feel more comfortable, and then he can hit the deep plays with Thielen or Diggs or even Rudolph on seam routes that we're accustomed to them making with all the talent they have on offense. I think the offensive line has also gone into the fact that they've struggled a little bit, a couple injuries, a fairly young offensive line. So yeah, I think it'll be not too close, but the Jets could surprise people in that one. Next up, we got the Patriots and Bears. Jared, you can kick this one off.
Yeah, so the Patriots last week played the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. And like normally, Tom Brady gets the ball at the end of the game.
Left him too much time, man.
I mean, that's something you just can't do. It's just he's one of those guys that just him, Drew Brees, Montana. He's just one of those special guys that no matter how much time you have left or a little time, he's gonna find a way to win the game. And it just seems like the Chiefs definitely had this one in their grasp for sure. Mahomes is definitely the real deal. If anybody had any questions about him, especially after Jacksonville, maybe a fluke after the way Jacksonville played last week, this was the game to show that when they meet again in the playoffs, that it's going to come down to game-winning drive or has the ball last. Bears had a tough loss against the Dolphins last week in overtime. Definitely had chances to win that game. Gave up a 17-point lead in the fourth. I think Mitchell Trubisky is the real deal. I think that last week showed me that. I think they exposed the Dolphins' secondary problems with Torrey McTyer getting Taylor Gabriel with 112 yards last week. I think this game's going to be like last week. I think it's going to come down to Tom Brady having to win this game for him again because the defense plays good, but at the end of the day, Tom Brady's Tom Brady. I have this game going 23-20 Patriots.
Yeah, I've got it being a pretty high-scoring, close game as well. I mean, like you said, the Patriots, I think they're finally acting like the regular Patriots team we're used to seeing the last couple of years. Struggled pretty early, but they're accustomed to. I think just in previous years they were able to squeak out wins early in the year, even that were close. Bears, I'm still overall impressed by their offense. Their defense last week was really surprising when they gave that many points to the Dolphins too. And love or hate Brock Osweiler, and then they still had to start him. And we all know you have a mixed bag with Osweiler. You never entirely know what you're going to get with him.
For sure.
He'll go out and he'll sometimes do what he did last week, and then other times he'll go out and throw a pick on the very first pass he throws.
Yeah.
I got the Patriots winning 20-24. I think overall, like Jared said, you put the ball in Tom Brady's hands towards the end of the game, he's going to find a way to win most of the time. I think Sonny Michel's going to have another big game. I was really impressed by him against the Chiefs last week. I just think overall it's going to be close. I think the Patriots edge it out.
Yeah, I'm taking the Pats in this one as well. I think the Bears defense was caught off guard last week with the swap to Osweiler. I think he's more the gunslinger than Tannehill is. He got the ball down the field pretty well to the speedy guys. But I'm going to take the Patriots in this one, 30-17. I don't think it's a bad game from the Bears, but I just don't think their offense can really handle an offense like the Patriots. They can put up some points, but it's just there's a big gap in the talent. I think Trubisky has surprised a lot of people. I think he's played a lot better than even I expected. I think Cohen has helped him a ton. I think Cohen should be the most vital part of that offense for most games just because that's what Trubisky's good at, getting running backs out in space, getting the quick guys downfield, hitting them for quick routes. I think Allen Robinson has been kind of iffy, but I think he can play pretty well in this one. They're trying to get him the ball a little bit more. Taylor Gabriel, another guy in the slot, could have a pretty good game against the Pats secondary. But overall, I think Brady and company get it done again. Like Miller said, Michelle will have a good game along with probably James White. But they're going to pull it out 30-17 in my opinion. Next up, we got the Bills at the Indianapolis Colts. In this one, I'm going to take the Colts. I think the Bills' quarterback problems are going to catch up to them once again this week. Starting Derek Anderson, which to me is definitely an upgrade over interception Peterman. So overall, the vet, I think, will help that offense get moving a little bit more. You're going to see a lot of safe routes, feeding LaShawn McCoy a ton as well. But I think the Colts offense looks a lot better. T.Y. could be back this week, which will be huge. I think that offense takes another step with him. The cloudiness at running back kind of scares me. I think that's been an issue during Luck's entire career. He doesn't really have that number one back. Hines has been in there more as of late. Marlon Mack coming off injury, Jordan Wilkins, everyone getting touches, no one really stepping up completely. I think Mack is getting healthier along with Hilton, but I think if Hilton plays, it's going to be a lot bigger of a victory for the Colts. So it's going to come down to that one. So in this one, I'm going to take the Colts 21-13. And Miller, what you got for this one?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a little bit closer. I mean, Derek Anderson's not a huge improvement over Nathan Peterman. I mean, it's still an improvement. I mean,
Yeah.
Nathan Peterman, you're gonna get like multiple interceptions every time.
Yeah.
And last week led to an interception that lost them the game. The Colts as an offensive unit have woken up a little bit. I mean, a couple weeks ago when they played the Patriots, it was a pretty close game up until the very end when the Patriots finally pulled away. I don't think the Colts are as bad as their record really represents they are. I still think the Bills overall have impressed me this year. Their defense is a lot more solid than I thought they'd be. I expect LaShawn McCoy to be a huge fantasy asset. Probably going to get like a lot of carries this week. I have the Colts winning out on the last minute field goal 17-14.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the Colts have been in basically every game they've played this year. Caught some bad luck. Some of the coaching decisions have been in question. I don't feel like they should be. I think he's taken some risks. And with a team like that, with the struggles they have on defense and even on the offensive line, I think you have to take some risks to get some wins for sure.
Yeah, I have the Colts in this one too. It doesn't seem like for the Colts, offense has been the problem. I mean, except for the running back issues. I think it's been the defense, which isn't totally their fault with a bunch of injuries. If you saw the Patriots game, you saw their whole entire defense dropping like flies. I mean, it was pretty evident. And they still were in that game before Luck threw an interception, but that's not really the point. I mean, if you have to shoulder an entire team, I'd probably throw an interception too.
Yeah.
Bills last week had that game in their hands, and Nathan Peterman choked it away.
Threw it away, quite literally.
I just think that the Bills are just not quite. They're definitely in rebuild mode for sure. I think this is two teams that need a win here. I think they're both going to be hungry to get a win, but I just feel like with Derek Anderson starting this week, and I mean, LaShawn McCoy is finally getting the touches I think that we all kind of expected him to, but I just think that this game's going to get out of hand, and they're going to have to rely on Derek Anderson to throw the ball, and I just think this game's not going to be close, 35-10. It's my biggest blowout of the week for sure.
Jumping ahead after that, you got the Browns trying to rebound at the Buccaneers. I think overall, I would expect the Browns to rebound. I think last week was a pretty humbling experience for all of them, especially Baker Mayfield. But like you said, we all agree the Chargers defense is starting to wake up a little bit, and Baker Mayfield is a rookie. He's going to have some tough games here or there. I don't think anyone in Cleveland expects him to make the playoffs this year, like some experts may have wildly predicted. I'm still not overall impressed by the Buccaneers. I know they played a close one last week. I just don't like them as a unit. I don't like their coaching. Really, everything about them I don't like right now. I just think they're not a good team.
You really love the Bucs, don't you? Big fan, huh?
Oh, for sure. But I mean, I expect the Browns to rebound this week. I think Baker's gonna have a pretty big game. I got them winning 24-14. Also expect Carlos Hyde to get a bulk of carries.
Yeah, and this one, I'm going to take the Browns as well. I think the Buccaneers are going to continue their struggles. I'm not a huge fan of Winston. I think the turnovers are an issue with him, especially against subpar defenses, just like last week. Throwing a few picks to that Falcons defense that has been basically the worst passing defense in the league for a lot of this season. I think Baker has a rebound game. Hyde does too. I think Hyde had like 34 total yards last week.
Yeah, it wasn't impressive.
It was not very good. I think Baker comes back. He's hungry. That's just the person he is. Trying to come off that loss and get a big win against the Bucs. I think that defense plays really good against the Bucs compared to what the Bucs played last week. Expect Denzel Ward to have a really good game. He'll be on Evans or Deshaun Jackson, either one, for some of this game. I think he can probably grab himself an interception off Winston, if I had to guess. But I think overall they shut down the Bucs running game, force Winston to throw the ball, and that doesn't really happen. So I'm going to take the Browns in this one, 24-17, and I think the score is probably going to be a little bit closer than the actual game is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have the Browns 28-24. Last week they definitely struggled. I think that was the first complete team they've played all season. I mean, they've been pretty much close with overtime games and such, but I think that, like you said, Chargers defense really exposed Mayfield, which he's a rookie, so I mean, what are you gonna expect? I think that Buccaneers defense hasn't been solid. They just fired their defensive coordinator. I mean, I know you played the Falcons. The Falcons have probably one of the top 5 offenses in the league right now, but I just don't like the Buccaneers with how much Winston had to throw last week. He almost threw for 400 yards, but it's just one of those things where they need to get the running game going. They drafted Ronald Jones the second this year, and they haven't used him at all. I mean, I know Peyton Barber's good, but you just got to get that guy going. He's explosive, and the reason they drafted him in the second round. I think this game's going to be pretty close with just the way the offense is played and how I just think the Browns find a way to pull this out. I think it's going to be one of those games where it seems closer on paper than it really was, like if you watch it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the Bucs defense has looked good at all this year, impressed me at all. Jumping ahead after that, you get the Lions at the Miami Dolphins. Miami pulling out a heartbreaker last week against the Bears. Nearly thought they lost it. It came down to a last-minute field goal. In fact, I'm going to take Miami 20-21. Got Osweiler starting again this week. I mean, like I said earlier, you got a mixed bag in him. I do think overall he's still going to have a good week. Wouldn't be surprised to see the run game also take off again. I think the Lions are a pretty average team right now. I think they're on their way to being good in the future. Just need to add more talent and a lot of skill positions. But yeah, I think the Dolphins are going to win a close one this week.
Yeah, and this one, I'm actually going to take the Lions. Picked against the Dolphins last week, didn't work out very well, but I'm going to do it again this week. I know Jared's happy that I'm picking against them because apparently it means they're going to take the win. But I expect Stafford to have a pretty good game, but I actually think the ground game can be really important. The Dolphins haven't played great against the run game. I believe they have the third or fourth worst rushing defense so far this season.
It's around there, yeah.
So I think the Lions, with Kerryon Johnson, I think they have to feed him carries. He seems to get better as the game goes on. So I think if they can feature him a little bit more, he can get a lot of yards, a lot of touches, and take the pressure off of Stafford a little bit. It's one of those games where I kind of expect the Lions to be down late in the game, but I expect Stafford to kind of come back, wake up later in the game as he does a lot of the time and kind of lead them to a comeback. I think he can have a pretty good game. Kenny Galladay is definitely something to look out for. I think Xavier Howard will probably be on Golden Tate for most of this one. Expect Galladay to be in the slot a little bit more, do a lot of those underneath routes, and then try to burn them deep for a deep one from Stafford with the cannon that he has. So in this one, I'm going to have to go with the Lions 31, Dolphins 21. Jared, what about you?
Yeah, I have the Dolphins in this one. I think it's going to be a close game like last week. I feel like they're both talent-wise evenly matched. Brock Osweiler last week for the Dolphins had a really good game, had a career high in yards, 380. They got the running game finally going with Frank Gore, had 101 rushing yards last week, and I think they finally found a good mix for Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore. The Lions coming off a bye had a good win against the Packers. I just think that with the Lions defense, it's just they have Darius Slay and they have some talent on their defense. But I just feel like at the end of the day, it's like I said, it's gonna be a close one. I have it 21-20. I think the Dolphins are gonna find a way to come down and win this game with a field goal.
Yeah, the first game of the afternoon one's going to be 4:05 Eastern start. Saints at Ravens. In this one, I am going to take the Saints.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Big
know.
surprise there.
Shocking. I know. Hey, you both picked the Saints as well, so I don't want to hear it. So in this one, I think the Saints continue what they've been doing this season. I know the Ravens defense is daunting, been great this year so far. Honestly, a top 5 defense, and on paper, on the field, any way you want to think about it. That secondary has been killer, and that defensive line showed last week that it's legit. Mariota didn't have very much fun against it last week. But I think the Saints coming off the bye, Kamara's going to be rested. He's been banged up a little bit. Ingram getting another bye week to kind of get in shape, get a little bit more work in and practice with the team rather than by himself when he was suspended. I think the offense comes out, has a pretty good game against the Ravens, maybe a little bit less scoring than we've seen in previous games from the Saints. But I am going to take this one 27-17. Breeze comes out, does what he does later in the game probably. Flacco, I don't love Flacco, but I think Lamar Jackson in this game could play a role just because the packages he's been getting more plays in those packages, especially last week saw him get a nice carry for like 20 plus. They're making plays for him that get him in space, get him moving. That offensive line is pretty quick on the outside. So I think that their offense could have an okay game, but overall the Saints just have too much on offense. Michael Thomas, Kamara, Ingram, Cameron Meredith even. all round up into a 27-17 win.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow suit on that. I think Mark Ingham's gonna have a quiet week. I do think the Ravens' rush defense is just too daunting for him.
Yeah.
I would put Kamara to honestly have a big day passing wise. Same
Yeah.
with Breeze. I think Breeze is gonna pretty much put a good amount of distance in the record book for his all-time passing record. I think the Ravens' defense is gonna get humbled a little bit this week. I do think overall the Saints are energized, coming off killing their opponent 2 weeks ago, and coming off a bye week. Everyone's kind of rested. And everyone has more time to get used to the playbook. Also, just like rest from some injuries. I know bumps and bruises at the year.
Yeah, Lattimore was banged up after that Redskins game, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. They had a couple injuries on defense against Washington that didn't look great. Anzalone was banged up as well, so it'll be interesting to see how that defense.
Yeah, I think overall again, I think the defense is gonna have a pretty big game this week. I think no one's really gonna expect it. I do think they're gonna step up though. Overall, I've got the Saints winning about 28 to probably 14. I don't think the Ravens are gonna put that many points. Their offense honestly has been pretty average all year long. They've been bailed out by their defense time and time again. But I just think the Saints are gonna be too explosive this week.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go different from y'all. I think I have the Ravens in this one. I like the Ravens defense a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Ravens defense a lot. They showed last week, even though the Titans defense we all know is what you would call abysmal. But I just don't think the Saints offense has really seen a defense so far. It's been anywhere decent. I think bottom half of the league for sure. I think this is going to be a telling game to see what they're going to see in the playoffs, I think, for sure. I like Flacco. I think he's done good this year.
He's been better. He's definitely been better.
I think Lamar Jackson, people even though say Lamar Jackson wasn't a factor getting drafted, him playing better, I think it definitely does make a difference for sure.
I think definitely encourage him to play better.
I think this game is, because it's at Baltimore, I think this game's going to be kind of a grinder. I don't see a whole lot of points getting scored, and I think it's going to be one of those almost defensive type games. I mean, I don't think Breeze is going to have, I think for the Ravens, obviously for them to win this game, I think Breeze is going to have to throw an interception or have turnovers for sure. I think if they're able to contain Kamara, I mean, Kamara's going to get his. He's going to get his receptions and he's going to get his yards. I think Alex Collins plays a big factor in this game. I think if they are able to get him the ball and get him carries and at least keep the running game going where they don't have to put it totally on Flacco, because when they have to put it on Flacco, that's when mistakes happen. I had this game 24-17 the Ravens.
Yeah, I think if the Ravens have a chance in this one, Flacco's going to have to play good because the Saints' rushing defense has been really good this year, surprisingly. With that defensive line, we know they can rush the passer, but the linebackers have been stepping up a lot better in the running game. So I'd be surprised if Collins has a good game. I expect Allen to get a lot of touches just from passing it and Flacco having to get rid of it fairly quickly. Against Davenport and Jordan on the outside for the Saints. But the same thing goes for the Saints. I think Kamara, like you said, Miller, will have to have a pretty good game catching the ball because that Ravens defensive line can get a lot of pressure. Breeze is going to have to step up in the pocket a lot and make some plays. Next game on tap for us, Cowboys at the Redskins. Jared, you can lead this one off.
Yeah, so I have the Redskins in this one. Redskins coming off a good win against Carolina, which Carolina's a tough team, just seems like for everybody. With Cannon, they always going to have a chance with McCaffrey in the backfield and their daunting defense. Cowboys coming off a good win against Jacksonville, scored 40 points, which not many of us saw. Jacksonville looked pretty abysmal on offense. I think their defense, Cowboys defense, is finally kind of starting to show up, I think, is what Leighton Vander Esch is kind of feeling Sean Lee's role. And I think once Sean Lee gets back into the swing of things on defense, I think it'll be him, Jalen Smith, and then Vander Esch.
Yeah, a lot of speed at linebacker.
I think they're going to look good. I mean, you can definitely tell, especially whenever they played the Texans. I think when Deshaun had designed runs in the goal line, I think they were finally able to cut him off if you watch that game. Yeah. Jalen Smith especially was able to cut him off. Yeah, I think the Redskins, it's at Washington. Alex Smith is just one of those guys. I think this is going to be a game for them that he's going to come out and I think he's going to perform well against their defense. I feel like their defense or their offense matches up well with the Cowboys to exploit some problems. I think this game's still close because it's a divisional matchup. 20-20 Redskins.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to take the Cowboys in this one. I think they get their first road win of the season. I think it'll be a lower scoring game than people might expect. Both of these defenses have played pretty well, other than the Redskins giving up 43 to the Saints. But that's kind of an anomaly. You don't play a Saints offense every week. For the most part, they've looked pretty good so far. I think the Redskins are a little bit banged up on both sides of the ball, but I think they're still gonna keep it close. Alex Smith, good game manager, makes the plays that he needs to. AP will have to run the ball really well, I think, for them to stay in this game. I think the Cowboys offense can get rolling behind Zeke. I think they're going to have to feed Zeke a lot of carries, get him involved in the pass game as well, because the receivers on the outside are not doing very much for Dak. Beasley showed up last week for basically the first time this season, especially to the extent that it had 8 or 9 catches, a couple touchdowns. He's going to have to be a guy that Dak looks to kind of play the safety blanket role, considering Jeff Swaim isn't a great tight end for pass catching. They miss Witten a lot, I think, in that sense. I think Dak has had to kind of run for his life a little more so far this year than most people expected with that offensive line. But I am going to take the Cowboys in a tough one. I'm going to take them 20-13, and it's going to be a really tough, hard-nosed game for both sides of the ball. I think the Cowboys secondary is what's going to play the biggest role. If they get burnt by Crowder and company, it's going to be a tough day for them. So the back end, the safeties are going to play a big role in a Cowboys 20-13 victory.
Yeah, I'm also taking the Cowboys. Dak looked like he was back in this state last week, absolutely running all around Jacksonville's defense. Like you said, Zeke has had a killer couple weeks lately too. Overall, the Redskins' skill positions don't impress me. Adrian Peterson has had a really solid year. But outside of that, the receivers haven't been all that productive in my opinion. Alex Smith has been impressive, and I think has filled the void like they thought he would for Kirk Cousins. But overall, the Cowboys are a hot team right now. They've been winning pretty consistently lately. I am impressed with their offense as of right now. You don't just put 40 points on the Jaguars for no reason. They are the number 1 defense in the league for a reason. I've got the Cowboys winning pretty big by 20-14. And then jumping ahead to that, you got Rams at the 49ers. Rams playing a pretty close one last week against Denver. Gurley absolutely killing it last week too. Had over 200 rushing yards and a couple touchdowns. I don't think he's gonna have as many yards, but I do think he's gonna have the same touchdown rate. I think Jared Goss is gonna have a big week. 49ers, they just don't have the offense, I think, to keep up with the Rams. Not many teams in the league do right now. Defense is still taking hits with injuries and overall just not looking all that impressive. I think the Rams winning pretty big 35-21 this week.
Yeah, I think the Niners surprised a lot of people last week, played the Packers really well. I was expecting that to be not that close. I thought it was going to be a blowout. I know both of you guys did too, especially Jared. What was it? 42-3 was the prediction on that one. They put up a lot of points. I don't think anyone expected that though. Marquise Goodwin had himself a game. The track star was just running all over.
When TJ Beathard's your starting quarterback, I don't think you know what to expect.
Yeah, it was weird, but he went out there. I think the offense looks really comfortable with him. I think Breida had a great game. What's it? Hostert? I don't know how to pronounce his name. But their backup running back, that isn't Alfred Morris. I know a lot of fantasy owners were upset about that one last week. He had a good game. Morris barely touched the ball. I think he touched it once for like 8 yards, and then it got called back. Didn't touch the ball again. That's not ideal for Alfred Morris owners. But I think the Rams are going to take this one. That offense is just kind of above the rest of the league, other than Chiefs, Patriots, Saints. All of those teams are in that category, but the Rams have looked amazing, especially Gurley. For me, he's a top MVP choice as of right now. I know Kupp is expected to miss this one. Brandon Cook's still a little banged up. I think Robert Woods can take another step this week, continue the play he's been having, which has been under the radar, but really good so far. He's really reliable for Goff. I think that offensive line plays pretty well against the Niners. They get a lot of push. So I am going to take the Rams in this one, 33-20. And I think it's a pretty good game on both sides. I think the Niners actually have an okay game, but I just don't think they can score like the Rams can.
For sure not.
And they end up taking the L here.
Yeah, Rams last week at Denver. It was snowing. It was cold. I think it was barely above freezing. Gurley had himself a game, like you said, over 200 yards rushing. I think that was kind of the main emphasis last week was to get him the ball and not try to put it too much in Goff's hands. Even though I think he could have won that game if he had to throw the ball a bunch. I think it was just better that they get the ball to Gurley, especially in that type of game. It just kind of felt like one of those games.
A chilly one, yeah.
I felt like one of those kind of grinder type, just give him the ball and let him kind of do his thing, which, I mean, most of the time it's going to work no matter what.
Especially when you have Gurley on your team.
Yeah.
For sure.
Last week, like Adam said, 49ers played pretty good against Green Bay. I mean, Green Bay's defense is suspect at best, and like I said, I wasn't expecting the game to be even close. 42-3, not a good call. But
hey, your team did win though. Packers pulled it out. Rodgers looked ridiculous.
Here again, I think last week the 49ers, I think that's a test to Kyle Shanahan and how good he really is. How offensive play caller. I think he was kind of like McVay. I think they're both kind of the same type of person. Especially see what would happen if they had Jimmy Garoppolo back, and with all the injuries they have on offense. I don't think this game's close. I still think the Rams are going to put up a lot of points. I think the 49ers are able to, but I just feel like the overall talent difference is too big for them. Yeah. I have this game 42-17.
Yeah, so another blowout sustained by the Niners, according to Jared. The 8:20 Eastern game, I think it's probably the game of the week, in my opinion, a close one, if I had to guess. Bengals at Kansas City playing the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, who's been outstanding this year. Last week, honestly, except for a couple interceptions, out-dueled Tom Brady. But when you give Brady the ball with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, he's going to do what he does. And once again, he showed why he is Tom Brady. In this one, I am going to take the Chiefs at home. I think Arrowhead will be booming as it normally is. That environment is honestly probably the best in the league. The Chiefs fans, real powerful in that one. But I think Mahomes goes out, has a pretty good game, maybe a little bit quieter. They might try to run the ball with Hunt more, get him even more involved. I think Kelsey against the slower linebacking crew of the Bengals can have a pretty good game. I don't think Burfict and his dirty self can really contain Travis Kelsey for that entire one. Hey, listen, him and Juju went at it last week. I don't expect anything to change this week. So I am going to take the Chiefs in this one, 40-24. I think they put up a lot of points. I know the Bengals defense has played a lot better than people expect, but I think they still find a way to put up points. Kareem Hunt gets in the end zone a couple times. Tyreek Hill does what he does, and they pull out a 16-point win.
I definitely don't have the Chiefs scoring 40 points this week. Overall, I've been really impressed by the Bengals' play this year. It seems like they haven't really ever been killed. Every game's been pretty close. I don't think anyone expected going into this year with Andy Dalton as a starting quarterback and the amount of mystery at their head coaching position. Chiefs got humbled last week. It's nothing to be super ashamed about. It was the Patriots and Tom Brady. It's October football, and at the end of the day, the Patriots are the Patriots. They still played them close, and I think it is a preview of the playoffs in the future, as long as everything goes according to plan. Andy Reid's putting up Coach of the Year type numbers right now. His team looking prepared overall. Even with losing playmakers on defense, their defense has stepped up through a couple weeks, and they've looked better as a unit overall lately. Like I said, the Bengals usually play these kind of games close. I don't think the Bengals are nearly a bad team. I think the Chiefs aren't going to score as many points. Like I said, I think it's going to be more of a quiet game for Pat Mahomes. I think the run game's going to be more of a factor than it really has been in past weeks. I have the Chiefs winning 21-17.
Yeah, I have the Chiefs in this one. I think it's going to come down to like a last-second type field goal type game. Both teams coming off heartbreaking losses. The Chiefs, obviously, to the Patriots, with what we've talked about before. Just can't get the ball to Brady with 2 minutes left, less than a minute, because at the end of the day, at Gillette Stadium, he doesn't lose. You never see it, and it just won't happen. Last week for the Bengals, they lost to the Steelers. Same type of deal. Scored a touchdown, then they had a lead, and they gave them the ball back. The Steelers
left a little too much time.
Yeah, Juju, Antonio, and Ben. At the end of the day, they're going to find a way to pull out that game, even though more than likely they shouldn't with the way their defense plays. And like you said, the Bengals have really impressed this year. They're leading the division. I don't think anybody expected that. I think everybody thought it was going to be the Steelers or the Ravens, I think.
Yeah.
Dalton's played well. Joe Mixon's finally getting the carries I think everybody expected him to last year as a rookie. He got hurt. But I think the fact they had Jeremy Hill and they had Giovanni Bernard, they're trying to figure out a way to give – those are all starting caliber backs. So don't get me wrong. I'm not taking anything away from them. I think they all needed carries, and I think it was good to see Hill go to the Patriots and such. I think that this game is going to be, like I said, really close. I think it's going to be 31-30. I look for Joe Mixon to have a really good game. I think the way that Sonny Michel's game went last week with over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, look for them to give him the ball a lot and have a play action come off of that. And I would also look for Tyreek to have another big game again. I just don't think Cincinnati is quite there with their corners. I think this game, like I said, is going to come down to the last second field goal, 31-30 Chiefs.
Yeah, I think the Bengals will gash the Chiefs defense running the ball. I think that's a good call there. I'm going to change my score 38-24, a 2-touchdown game. So coming up the rear are going to be Giants at Atlanta playing the Falcons. Miller, you can kick this one off.
Yeah, I think overall this game's going to be closer than everyone seems to think. I mean, we all know the injuries the Falcons have sustained on defense and how it's overall impacted their year so far. I think they have their usual playmakers. I think this Atlanta team's probably leading the division, if not really challenging for it. I mean, Matt Ryan's leading a pretty solid offense. Say what you will. Look, the Saints would also be competing for that division. It'd be closer than it is right now.
I will say that, yeah.
All right. But I mean, like we said, Matt Ryan, the offense, has pretty much been killing it. I think even with the loss of Devontae Freeman, which will hurt, I think Tevin Coleman is a pretty solid back that can run the ball if you ask him to, or be their usual scat back. I know they also have another running back on roster that did pretty well last week with Freeman being out.
Yeah, Ito Smith has stepped up, especially getting those goal line touches.
I think he's could have a pretty solid game. I mean, Giants' defense isn't bad. I think they're about pretty average to at least pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know their offensive woes right now. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. is not looking like he usually is. Eli Manning's looking like this could be probably his last year.
Yeah, it needs to be.
I do think the Giants, in my opinion, the Giants should open up to another quarterback. Maybe, I mean, at this point, it's a lost year. They're not going to challenge for playoffs or division or anything like that. I would probably maybe see what Kyle Lula has. You drafted him for a reason. I know he's not projected to be like a super great starter, but I mean, you never know in the NFL.
I would like to at least see what he can do, though.
And I think, honestly, I think this could be a game where you potentially see it. I know Pat Shurmur has said time and time again that he has faith in Eli. But I mean, at the end of the day, you got to win games. The Giants need to rebuild. They need to start looking for the future after Eli, whether that means drafting a quarterback in this offseason or maybe even trying to sign one, or just overall just seeing what Kyle Lula can do with the offense. I think Saquon Barkley has a pretty big game. I do think this is going to be more of a defensive type game than we've really seen. I can also see the Falcons exploding for like over 40 points. I think go either way. I have the Falcons winning 27-24 at home.
Yeah, I think the Giants could hold their own in this one just because their offense could get going. Evan Ingram is scheduled to be back this week, which I think is a big upgrade for that offense.
Would definitely have a huge impact overall.
Yeah, I know Eli has struggled a lot this year. I think the faith, I love that Pat Shurmur has faith in his quarterback. That's important. But at some point, your faith has to run out when you're struggling this bad. They really need a win. They got to be hungry for this one. But I think the Falcons come in even hungrier in a division that they were expected to contend in, be up there, not sitting at the bottom, even below Tampa Bay. No one expected that. No one can really predict the injuries, but even then, people still want them to be at the top of the division, which I think they should be. That offense, when it gets going, is really nice, even without Freeman. I think Smith is going to get a lot of touches inside the Giants' 20 this week as well. I think it's going to be fairly high scoring just because these defenses haven't looked great. The Giants' defense honestly looking better so far. That Falcons defense, especially throwing the ball, you've been able to throw on them all year so far. Those injuries, Keanu Neal, Deion Jones, really hurting them. I know McKinley is also banged up, so we'll see about that one. So I think overall, I think the Falcons will pull it out. It could be a little bit closer than people are expecting, but I don't think it'll be all that close. I think it's going to be 31-17 Falcons, and the Giants go home with another loss, and they just get more questions about, will Eli start next week? What's Odell doing? Why is he so angry? And overall, I think Saquon continues what he's been doing this year, which is having a great season. Unfortunately for him, he's not on a great team.
Yeah, both these teams playing Monday night, both are underperforming. The Falcons because of injuries, which I mean, they're one of my contenders this year for the Super Bowl. I think everybody had them, especially with their type of offense. I think the only thing holding them back was the Saints in their division. I think just knocking each other out, I think, was kind of the big thing. The Giants, 1-5. I think it's about time to move on from Eli Manning, like you said, Miller. I think it's time for Kyle Lauletta to finally get a chance because at the end of the day, I think people who had questions about Barkley being drafted at 2, I think are kind of over now. I think even though they probably should take him down, at the end of the day, Barkley looks like the guy that they drafted. and maybe they just didn't like a QB they saw, even though they were up that high. And I don't really like this upcoming draft class of quarterbacks. I'm not a huge fan. I think if you have Shea Patterson and Hubert as your top QB prospects, I think that's a problem. And I don't think they're going to go. So I think this is important. If they start getting behind, I think they need to just give the rookie a chance because maybe he'll be the guy. Because there's a reason they drafted him pretty high.
Yeah.
I think this game, both defenses are doing. They're about that.
They're pretty bad. It's hard to say.
Pretty average, below.
Yeah, so I think this is going to be Odell's breakout week. I think he finally won't kick any or punch any trash cans or cooling fans this week. I think
that would be a step up.
Yeah, I think he has a big game. I think Barkley has a big game. I think it's probably going to be like it was last week against the Eagles. I think they're going to get him the ball a lot. Try to find ways to get him out in open space, which is kind of the big thing for him. He's big playability. I still think with the overall talent on offense with the Falcons, even with the injuries and to the defense and to the offense with Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu questionable this week, I still think they find a way to pull this game out. I think this game is going to be closer than what people think. I have the Falcons winning 35-31.
I mean, on the bright side, at least if Odell gets pissed at Eli again, we could see another Lil Wayne interview on ESPN again.
You're not wrong about that one. That's a good call.
Yeah, I think everybody's pretty much tired of that. Like, I would see if they could trade him, get anything they can.
Yeah.
I think they're done with that whole experiment.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
The thing with Saquon is I think people are hating on that pick, but honestly, if you would have taken a quarterback last year, you don't have a running back because you wouldn't have Barkley. You struggle on the offensive line already. Eli is getting pressured every time he drops back. You have a receiver that complains a lot, which understandably he doesn't have the greatest quarterback in the world. But honestly, you need to go and do your job. Odell hasn't really done that great so far. Might be on Eli somewhat, but I think the hate on the Barkley pick doesn't really make sense because I think he's going to be a piece in that offense for years to come, for probably another decade, and be a bell cow back that they really need for Eli.
And let's not forget, as of right now, Odell has a better QBR than Eli Manning does this season.
Yeah.
I don't think their record would be any different, to be quite honest. I think they'd be worse than they'd be calling whichever quarterback, Darnold or
they'd be calling
a bust, and then you'd just be back in the same spot. And I mean, there's just no point. I think
at least this year, Saquon's a bright spot for that offense when really nothing else has been.
Absolutely.
You need to keep the GM for sure. Give him at least a chance.
That's going to do it for us. The second episode of Logically Speaking Sports has come to a conclusion. We thank you for listening. You all have a great rest of your day.